The small hand that gripped his arm was trembling so much that the fingers could barely close. The boy couldn't have been more than 9 years old, but his eyes had already seen things no child should ever know. But it wasn't fear of the boy that made the air heavy at that gas station lost on Route 9. That was what he was about to say, and the fact that, in less than an hour, 3 men would be dead, and none of them would be who Jake imagined. If you believe that some roads choose you for a reason, subscribe to the channel now because I have something very special in store for you in the next video, and leave a comment letting me know where you're watching from, because this story will stay with you for days. Jake Mercer had learned long ago not to stop for anyone. 57 years on the road had taught him that kindness was a luxury, and luxury killed you. He turned the key on his Harley at the Route 9 gas station, the last one before Cedar Falls, a town he swore he'd never set foot in again. But gasoline didn't negotiate with old promises. The sun was slowly setting, bleeding orange onto the cracked asphalt. 2 cargo trucks were parked, a white van with tinted windows. A silence that shouldn't exist in a place like that. That's when the hand grabbed his arm. Jake turned quickly, driven by the instinct of someone who'd been stabbed in the back before. But he wasn't a man. He was a boy, too thin. His shirt was 3 sizes too big. His eyes were sunken, red, and wet. "Please," the voice came out broken, hoarse from shouting alone. "Please, sir, I need help." Jake pulled his arm away. "Go away, kid." But the boy wouldn't let go. His fingernails were dirty with soil, dried blood underneath them. "They took her. My sister. They took her." Jake looked around. No one was looking back. The gas station attendant was hunched over the counter, pretending to read an old newspaper. The truck drivers had vanished. The white van had its windows closed, but Jake sensed someone was watching. "Go home, kid." "I have no home." The scream tore through. "They killed my mother 2 days ago, and now they've taken Emma. She's 6 years old. 6. Jake stood still. He didn't want to ask. He didn't want to know. He didn't want to carry another burden that wasn't his. But the boy continued. "There's a trailer, 12 kilometers from here. Dirt road off the old bridge. 3 men. One of them is a policeman. They said that if I told anyone, they would burn her alive." Jake closed his eyes. He took a deep breath. He smelled gasoline, sweat, and despair. "Why are you telling me this?" The boy looked down, at his clenched fists, at his hands that were trembling so much they seemed to disappear. "Because you're the only person who stopped here in the last 3 days who isn't afraid of them." And Jake knew the boy was right, because he recognized the white van. Jake slowly crouched down, his knees cracking, and got to the boy's level. He didn't touch him. He just stood there quiet, until the boy stopped trembling enough to look back. The boy's eyes were brown, almost black, but they held something deeper, something Jake recognized because he had seen it in the mirror every day since 1993. Blame. "What's your name?" Jake asked quietly. "Ethan." "Ethan, listen carefully. Where is your father?" The boy closed his eyes. A tear rolled down his cheek. "He left when Emma was born. He said he wasn't going to support 2 useless mouths." Jake clenched his jaw. "And your mother?" "She worked at the Roadside bar. She did odd jobs. We lived in a trailer behind the junkyard. 2 days ago, she argued with a guy. He hit her, badly. She never woke up again." Ethan's voice was mechanical now, as if he had told this story to himself 1,000 times, trying to make it hurt less. "It didn't work." "And did you see who took Emma?" Ethan nodded. "I was hiding under the bed. I heard everything. They said she was beautiful, that they were going to take her far away, that nobody would miss her." Jake took a deep breath. He felt the anger rising, an old acquaintance, always ready, always hungry. Were they in uniform? One of them was there, the oldest one, gray hair, tattoo on his neck, a snake. Jake knew this man. Sheriff Carl Dobbs, 20 years of dirt swept under the rug. 20 years untouchable. Ethan, why didn't you go to the police? The boy gave a sad smile, too old for such a young face. Because the sheriff is one of them. Jake remained silent. The wind blew, stirring up dust. The white van was still parked, engine off. But Jake knew they were waiting to see what he would do. Ethan took a step forward. He gripped Jake's leather jacket with both hands. I know you don't know me. I know this isn't your problem. But I have no one else. And Emma, she must be so scared. Jake looked down, at his small fingers gripping the leather, at his knuckles, white from so much force. And then he did something he swore he would never do again. He decided to care. Get on the motorcycle. Jake sped down the empty road on his Harley, Ethan clinging to his back as if his life depended on it. And it did. The wind bit cold, but it wasn't the wind that made Jake grip the handlebars until his fingers ached. It was a memory. 28 years ago, Jake had a daughter, Lily. Blonde hair, blue eyes, a laugh that lit up the whole house. She was 7 years old when she disappeared. She went out to play in the yard. She never came back. 3 days of searching. The entire city mobilized, police, volunteers, sniffer dogs. They found her body in a ditch 8 kilometers outside the city. They found the culprit too. Neighbor, churchman, husband, father. Jake didn't wait for the trial. That's why he spent 7 years in prison. And that's why, when he got out, his wife had already left, changed her name, and started a new life without him. Jake never had a family again. I never wanted it again. Until now. Sir? Ethan's voice came weakly, battling the wind. Are you all right? Jake didn't answer. He just sped up even more. The dirt road appeared after the old bridge, exactly where Ethan had said. Jake turned off the engine 200 meters away and pushed the motorcycle into the woods. Ethan got off, his legs wobbly. Stay here, Jake ordered. No, I'll go too. You will stay. She's my sister. Jake turned quickly and grabbed the boy's shoulders. He squeezed tightly. He looked deep into his eyes. If I don't return in 20 minutes, you run, go to the road, stop the first car that passes and shout, don't come back here, ever. Understand? Ethan was trembling, but he nodded. Jake let go of him and started walking. He stopped. He turned back. He took a knife out of his boot and placed it in Ethan's hand. If someone other than me shows up, you use this. Without thinking. Just use it. Ethan looked at the knife. At his own fingers, which he could barely hold. I don't know. I've never. Now you know. Survival is the only thing that matters. Jake turned and disappeared among the trees. The trailer was old, rusty, surrounded by trash and empty bottles. 2 pickup trucks were parked there. A light was on inside. Jake crouched behind a pile of old tires and waited. Voices. Laughter, and then a sound that made everything inside him freeze. A child crying. Emma. Jake closed his eyes. He counted to 10. He breathed, and when he opened his eyes again, Jake Mercer had disappeared. In its place, there was something far more dangerous. Jake moved slowly along the side of the trailer, each step measured and silent. He had learned in prison that violent men always left a door open. Arrogance made them careless. He was right. The back window was slightly open. Jake peeked in. 3 men, one of them in uniform, Sheriff Dobbs, exactly as Ethan described. Tattoo of a snake climbing up his neck. Early 50s, beer belly, gun in holster. The other 2 were younger. One was thin, with tattoos on his arms and rotten teeth. The other was large, heavy, and had a shaved head. And in the corner, sitting on the floor with her hands tied, was Emma. 6 years old, messy brown hair, face smeared with tears and dirt, enormous red eyes. She wasn't crying anymore, she just trembled. too quiet. Little children become quiet when they stop believing that someone is coming. Jake felt the knife at his waist. He felt the rage. He felt the prison again, the bars, the blood. On his hands. No, not this time. This time, he was going to get it right. Enough crying, princess, the skinny man chuckled, crouching down in front of Emma. You should be grateful. You're going to have a much better life than in that hole with your drug-addicted mother. She wasn't a drug addict, Emma shouted, her voice rasping. The slap came quickly, a sharp sound. The girl's head turned to the side. Jake almost went through the window at that moment. Almost. Dobbs stood up from his chair and adjusted his belt. Be careful with the merchandise, Kyle. It's worth less with brand names. Merchandise. Jake clenched his fists until his nails dug into his palms. When is the buyer arriving? The big guy asked. 2 hours, Dobbs replied. And he pays in cash, $15,000, divided into 3. $15,000. By a 6-year-old child. Jake took a deep breath. He counted the weapons. 2 had pistols on their hips. Dobbs had his in his holster, and probably another one on his ankle. 3 against 1. He'd faced worse odds before, but never with a child involved. He needed a plan. He needed a distraction. He needed the scream. It came from outside, sharp, desperate. Emma! Emma, ah! Ethan! No, no! The 3 men turned around. Dobbs pulled out his gun. Kyle ran for the door. What the hell is that? Jake cursed under his breath. The boy had disobeyed, and now everything was going to fall apart. Kyle opened the trailer door and went down the steps. Jake saw Ethan running through the trees, shouting his sister's name. Get him! Dobbs shouted. The big guy came out too, 2 guns, hunting a child. Jake had seconds. He entered through the window. Jake fell into the trailer with a dull thud. Dobbs turned quickly, gun already raised, but Jake was faster. He grabbed the sheriff's wrist, twisted, and the gun fell. Dobbs was strong but old. Jake was older, but braver. They fell together, broke a table, and bottles exploded on the floor. Emma, run! Jake shouted, but the girl was tied up, frozen, eyes wide open. Dobbs landed a punch on Jake's face. Blood spurted from his lip. Jake retaliated, elbow to the nose. Dobbs groaned, staggered back. Jake stood up. He ran to Emma. He grabbed the knife. He cut the ropes. When I say run, you run and don't look back. Understand? Emma nodded. Tears streamed down her face. But she was there, alive. Dobbs stood up, blood running from his nose. He smiled, red teeth. You don't know what you've gotten yourself into, man. Jake stood between him and Emma. I know exactly. Outside, Ethan's screams had stopped. Jake felt his stomach sink. Dobbs laughed. My men already got the brat, and now they're going to get you. The door opened. Kyle walked in, gun in hand, pointed at Jake. I found the bitch's brother. Dean's holding him outside. Jake didn't move. He calculated. 2 armed men, a child, a boy outside. No clear exit. But Jake Mercer was never a man of clean exits. Emma, he said softly, without taking his eyes off Dobbs. Close your eyes. But date! She closed it. Jake picked up the broken bottle from the floor and threw it at Kyle's face. The glass shattered. Kyle screamed, fell backward. The shot went astray and hit the ceiling. Jake stepped forward. He kicked Dobbs in the knee. The sheriff fell. Jake picked up his gun from the ground. He pointed it at Kyle. Let the boy go. Kyle was on the ground, his hand on his bleeding face, his gun far away. He's going to screw it up. Jake shot, in the leg. Kyle yelled, let the boy go. Outside, Dean yelled, Kyle, what the hell is going on? Jake went to the door. He opened it. He saw Dean holding Ethan by the neck, a gun pressed against the boy's head. Ethan's eyes met Jake's. Fear, apology, hope. Dean grinned. "Drop the gun, old man, or I'll blow the kid's head off." Jake stood still, gun in hand, heart pounding. He had two choices: drop the weapon, die, and then the children will die, or shoot, take a risk, and maybe, just maybe. Jake took a deep breath, and then he heard the sound. Engines, many, thunderous sounds of Harleys tearing through the night. Dean looked back, confused, scared. Jake smiled. "You should never have messed with children." The headlights cut through the darkness like blades, 6 motorcycles, then 8, then more than Jake could count. They formed a semicircle around the trailer, engines roaring, filling the air with contained fury. Jake recognized that sound. He had been part of that sound for 15 years, the Iron Cross MC, his old club. The first to get off the motorcycle was Bear, 140 pounds of muscle, a grey beard down to his chest, eyes that had seen and done things that God preferred not to judge. He walked slowly until he was 3 meters from Dean. "Let go of the boy." Bear's voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Dean pressed the gun harder against Ethan's head. "Stay there. I'm serious, I'll shoot." Bear stopped. He crossed his arms. He looked at Dean as if he were looking at an insect. "You can shoot, but before the bullet leaves, you'll have 7 holes in your chest, and then we'll keep you alive for hours. Just to make sure you understand the mistake you made." Dean looked around. 20 men, all armed, all quiet, all waiting. He released Ethan. The boy ran. Jake caught him, pulled him into the trailer and hugged him tightly. I'm so sorry," Ethan cried. "I heard her scream and you did what you had to do." Jake interrupted. "Now stay with your sister." Ethan ran to Emma. They hugged. They cried together, small, broken, but alive. Bear entered the trailer. He looked at Kyle on the floor, bleeding, at Dobbs, leaning against the wall, breathing heavily. "Jake Mercer," Bear said, almost smiling. 5 years without any news, and when you show up, it's in the middle of all that." Jake put the gun away. "I didn't ask for help." "I know, but the road has ears. And when someone sees you walking into an ambush, alone, we come." "How did you know?" "The gas station attendant called. He said there was an old biker being followed by a suspicious van and a desperate boy. We know Sheriff Dobbs. We knew what he does." Jake looked at Dobbs. "Why have you guys never done anything?" Bear sighed. "Because without proof, it's our word against his, and he has a badge." "And now?" Bear looked at Emma, at Kyle moaning on the floor, at the cut ropes, at the fear etched on the child's face. "Now we have proof." "But..." Before anyone could move, Dobbs laughed, blood on his teeth, insane eyes. "You have nothing. A thug's word is worth absolutely nothing. And what about this bitch here?" He pointed at Emma. "Nobody will miss her. Dead mother, gone father, no family. Another child lost in the system." Jake stepped forward. Bear grabbed his arm. "No. Let go, Bear." "Jake, it's not worth it." Jake looked at Emma, at her eyes, at the way she was trembling. He had made a promise to himself a long time ago, that he would never again let anger control him, that he would never again cross that line. But some lines exist to be crossed. Jake let go of Bear's arm. He walked over to Dobbs. Slowly, he looked deep into his eyes. "You're right. Nobody will miss you either." The punch came so fast that Dobbs didn't even see it, and when Jake finished, the sheriff was no longer laughing. Bear pulled Jake out of the trailer before he killed Dobbs. Almost. Jake was trembling, his hands bloody, his breathing erratic. 28 years of pent-up pain had exploded all at once. "Breathe," Bear ordered, holding Jake's shoulders. "Breathe, brother." Jake obeyed. He took a deep breath. He felt the cold air enter. He felt the anger, still hot but receding. Inside the trailer, 2 club members were tending to Emma and Ethan. Snake, the group's medic, a former paramedic expelled for assaulting an abusive supervisor, was checking Emma's injuries. She had bruises on her wrists, a cut on her lip, but nothing broken. Physically, Ethan wouldn't let go of her hand. "Will they be okay?" Jake asked. Snake looked up. His eyes were tired. "Physically, yes, but this here." He pointed to his head. "This is going to take a while." Jake knew. He had carried this kind of wound his whole life. Bear lit a cigarette. He offered one to Jake. Jake refused. "What do you want to do with them?" Bear asked, pointing to the trailer where Dobbs, Kyle, and Dean were being watched. "Police," Jake replied. Bear gave a bitter laugh. "Police?" "Jake, the sheriff is the police." "Then take them to the state police station, the FBI, anyone above him." "And you think they're going to believe us? A motorcycle club against a sheriff with 30 years of service?" Jake clenched his fists. "So what's the alternative? Do we kill them, bury them in the woods? What then? What does that solve?" Bear smoked silently. He looked at the children through the window. "They resolve that they will never hurt anyone again. And it transforms us into what they are." Bear turned to Jake. "We are already what they are, Jake. The difference is that we choose who to protect." Jake was about to answer when Wrench, the youngest member of the club, ran out of the trailer. "Bear, we have a problem." "What kind of problem?" "Dobbs had a radio. I think he managed to send a message before we arrived." Bear cursed. "At whom?" "I don't know, but I just heard sirens. Coming this way." Jake looked down the road. Nothing yet. But he believed in Wrench. The boy had bat-like ears. How many vehicles? 3, maybe 4. Bear threw the cigarette on the ground. "Shit," Jake thought quickly. "Hide the children. Take them far away from here. And you?" "I'll stay. I'll talk to them." "Jake, if they're friends with Dobbs, so it doesn't matter where we take the children. They'll find out. But if I stay, if I tell the story, if I make enough noise, maybe they'll think twice before covering it up." Bear studied Jake's face. "Are you willing to go back to prison for this?" Jake looked at Emma, at Ethan, for the hope that still existed in their eyes, fragile, trembling, but alive. "I've been to prison for revenge before," Jake said quietly. "This time it would be for something worthwhile." Bear nodded. "Then we'll stay together." Bear, "Shut up, Jake. Do you think I came all this way just to watch you die alone?" The other club members approached, one by one. Heavy silence. Decision made without words. They were going to stay. All of them. The sirens got louder, and Jake knew that the night was far from over. 4 patrol cars stopped in formation, blocking the only exit. 12 police officers got out, weapons drawn, bulletproof vests in hand. Blue and red lights cut through the darkness, turning the scene into a strobe-like nightmare. The commander was a tall, thin man in his 50s. A badge gleamed on his chest, Captain Randall Hayes. Jake didn't know him, but Bear did. "Hayes is clean," Bear murmured. "He and Dobbs have hated each other for years. That could be a good thing, or a very bad thing." Hayes walked ahead, hand on his holster, but without drawing his weapon yet. He stopped 10 meters from the semicircle of motorcyclists. "Can someone explain to me why I get an emergency call from Sheriff Dobbs, followed by radio silence, followed by a gas station telling me that a gang of bikers is armed on private property?" Bear stepped forward. "Captain Hayes, good evening. The situation is, I'm not interested in your version, Bear. Where's Sheriff Dobbs?" Jake moved. Slowly, his hands were visible. "He's in the trailer, alive, along with 2 accomplices." Hayes turned to Jake, sharp eyes. "And who the hell are you?" "Jake Mercer." Hayes frowned. "Mercer? I know that name. You're not the guy who killed—" "I didn't kill. I beat someone. I served 7 years. I got out. I tried to live in peace. Until today. Until I met a 9-year-old boy begging me to save his 6-year-old sister who had been kidnapped to be sold. The silence that fell was absolute. Hayes didn't blink. Repeat that. Jake repeated it. Every word, every detail. The gas station, Ethan, Emma, the trailer, Dobbs negotiating the sale of a child for $15,000. When Jake finished, Hayes stood there, processing, deciding. Where are the children? Inside, with one of our own, being treated. Hayes looked at his officers. He made a gesture. 2 of them cautiously stepped forward and entered the trailer. 30 seconds later, one of them came out. Pale face. "Captain, it's true. There are 2 children here. Hurt. Tied up until a few minutes ago. And Sheriff Dobbs, he's conscious. He confessed. He's laughing, saying we'll never be able to prove anything." Hayes closed his eyes, jaw clenched. Jake saw the war raging inside that man. He knew that war. It was the same one he had fought before entering the trailer. Hayes opened his eyes. Arrest Dobbs and the other 2 charges: kidnapping, child trafficking, attempted murder. One of the policemen hesitated. "Captain, the sheriff is—" "I know what he is," Hayes exploded. "And that's exactly why he's going to be arrested. Now." The police officers moved. Handcuffs, shouts of Dobbs, threats, promises of destruction. Hayes ignored him. He walked over to Jake. "You beat up a law enforcement officer. I beat up a child predator." Hayes looked deep into Jake's eyes. "I should arrest you too. I know, but I'm not going." Jake blinked, surprised. Hayes continued, "Because if I arrest you, this story dies here. It becomes one person's word against another. And men like Dobbs always have friends in high places. But if you go free, if you talk, if this story gets out, he'll have nowhere to hide. Are you asking me to make noise?" Hayes almost smiled. "I'm giving you permission." Jake nodded, slowly, respectfully. But before anyone could say anything else, one of the police officers shouted from the trailer, "Captain, the girl has collapsed." Jake ran. Bear followed. Hayes too. Inside, Emma was on the floor, convulsing. Her eyes rolled back, foam at her mouth. Snake was trying to hold her back. "She's in shock. I need an ambulance now." Hayes was already on the radio, but Jake knew. He had seen this before, with Lily, in the final moments. Trauma doesn't just kill the body. Sometimes it kills the soul first. The ambulance took 12 minutes to arrive. Each second felt like an eternity. Emma stopped convulsing after 3 minutes, but she didn't wake up. She was just breathing, weak, distant. Ethan didn't let go of her hand. "She'll be okay, right? Right?" Jake wanted to say yes. He wanted to lie, to give hope. But he had learned that false hope hurts more than the truth. "I don't know, kid." Ethan looked up, red eyes. "You promised." "I never promised." "You promised," Ethan shouted. "You said you were going to save her. You said so." Jake didn't answer, because Ethan was right. He had promised, not with words, but with actions. And now, the paramedics placed Emma on the stretcher. They fastened the straps. They connected her to oxygen. Ethan tried to climb up with her. "Sorry, son, just family," a paramedic said. "I am family. She is my sister." "I know, but—" Jake approached. He looked at the paramedic. "Let him go." "Sir, the rules—" "Screw the rules. That boy just lost his mother, almost lost his sister, and was hunted by 3 grown men who wanted to sell her. If you don't let him go in that ambulance, I swear you'll need another one for yourself." The paramedic looked into Jake's eyes. He saw something there that made him recoil. "That's fine. He can go." Ethan went inside. He held Emma's hand. The ambulance drove away. Sirens rang out in the night. Jake stood still, watching the lights fade, feeling the emptiness grow. Bear approached. "You did what you could. It wasn't enough. It never is. Jake turned around. I should have arrived sooner. I should have acted faster. I should have... Stop blaming yourself for things beyond your control. Bear finished. Jake, you're not God. You're just a man, and today, that man saved 2 lives. Emma could die, or she can live, but either way, she had a chance, because of you. Jake didn't answer. He looked at his own hands, dried blood, swollen knuckles, hands that had destroyed, hands that had tried to save. Hayes approached. Jake, I need your statement, officially. Now? The sooner the better, before lawyers start showing up. Jake nodded. He followed Hayes to the vehicle. But before going in, he stopped. He looked at Bear. If Emma doesn't survive, don't think about it. I won't survive either. Bear gripped Jake's shoulder. He squeezed tightly. Then we're going to have to make sure she survives. 3 hours of testimony, questions, follow-up questions, recordings, photos of Jake's injuries, photos of the trailer, evidence collected. When Jake left the police station, the sun was rising. Bear was waiting, leaning against his motorcycle, 2 coffees in his hand. Any news? Jake asked. Bear handed over a coffee. Emma is stable, sedated. Doctors say she'll need time, but she'll recover. Jake felt his knees buckle. He leaned against the motorcycle. He breathed. What about Ethan? With her. The social worker tried to get him out of the hospital. He bit her. Jake gave a short, bitter laugh. That kid's tough. Just like someone I know. Jake took a sip of the coffee. Hot, bitter, perfect. What happens now? Bear sighed. Now, Dobbs and the others are going to trial. It's going to take a while. They'll try to make a deal. They'll try to suppress evidence. But with your testimony, the children's testimony, and the physical evidence, they'll fall. And the children? Social services, orphanage, foster family, the system. Jake squeezed the glass. No. Jake, I said no. Bear looked at him. What are you thinking? Jake looked at the horizon. The sun was rising over the road. A new day, a new chance. I'm thinking that some promises shouldn't be made with words. 2 weeks later, Jake was sitting in an uncomfortable plastic chair in the hospital hallway. He had come every day. He carried flowers that Emma had never seen because she was still sedated. He brought food for Ethan, who refused to leave his room. But today was different. Today, Emma had woken up. The social worker, Margaret Chen, 40 years old, with tired but kind eyes, left the room and walked over to Jake. Mr. Mercer, Emma is awake and lucid. She's asking for you. Jake stood up. His heart was racing. Is she okay? Physically, yes. Emotionally, it's going to be a long process, but she's strong, stronger than I imagined. Jake entered the room. Slowly. Emma was sitting on the bed, looking too small against the huge white pillows. Ethan was beside her, holding her hand. When Emma saw Jake, she smiled. Weakly, but genuinely. Hi, Mr. Moto. Jake couldn't help but smile too. Hey girl, how are you feeling? Tired, and my head hurts. This too shall pass. Emma looked down at her own fingers. Ethan told me what you did, that you saved me. Your brother saved me first. He was very brave. Ethan blushed, but he didn't let go of Emma's hand. Emma looked up again. They said we'll have to go somewhere, an orphanage, until they find a family for us. Jake swallowed hard. Yeah. Are we going to stay together? The social worker who had come in behind Jake replied, We'll do our best, but siblings of different ages are difficult to put together, especially with a history of trauma. Ethan stood up. No, we're not going to break up. Ethan, I understand, but we are not going to separate. Emma started to cry. Ethan did too. Margaret tried to calm herself, but it was too late. The wound had reopened. Jake looked at the scene, at the pain, at the despair, and he made the craziest decision of his life. What if they didn't have to go to the orphanage? Margaret turned around. Mr. Mercer, unless you know some relative who... What if I stayed with them? Silence. Margaret blinked. You. Mr. Mercer, with all due respect, you have a criminal record. You've served time in prison. You live on the streets with no fixed address. You're not qualified to... I have a house, Jake interrupted. Small. In the countryside. I inherited it from my father. I've never used it. But it has 3 bedrooms, a backyard, school 2 kilometers away. That was a lie. The house existed, but Jake hadn't set foot there in 20 years. It was in ruins, but he could fix it. Even so, Margaret continued, the adoption process takes months. Investigations, psychological evaluations, and with her history, then don't call it adoption. Call it temporary guardianship, emergency guardianship, until they find something better. Margaret was about to answer when Emma spoke. Her voice was low but clear. I want to stay with Mr. Moto. Ethan nodded. Me too. Margaret looked at the children, at Jake. She sighed. Let me make a few calls. It took 3 days. 3 days of paperwork, phone calls, meetings with judges and social workers. Bear used all the contacts he had. Hayes wrote a letter of recommendation that Jake never read, but which apparently made a difference. In the end, Jake received the call. Temporary injunction approved. 3 months. Then, reassessment. Jake hung up. He looked at his phone. He had just become responsible for 2 children. He, who had sworn never to have a family again. He, who had failed his own daughter. He, who didn't even know how to take care of himself. Bear appeared beside him. Hey? They approved it. And are you happy? Jake remained silent. Then he replied, I'm terrified. Bear smiled. Welcome to fatherhood. 6 weeks later, Jake was in court. Not as a defendant this time, as a witness. The trial of Sheriff Carl Dobbs, Kyle Brennan, and Dean Hoffman had begun. The prosecution had evidence, testimony, DNA from the children in the trailer, deleted text messages recovered by digital forensics discussing merchandise and delivery. But the defense lawyers were good and expensive. Someone was funding them. Jake climbed onto the witness stand. He swore to tell the truth. He sat down. The prosecutor was young and determined. Mr. Mercer, can you describe what you saw on October 14th? Jake described it. Every detail, the gas station, Ethan's despair, the van following, the trailer. Emma tied up, the conversations about selling. When he finished, Dobbs's lawyer, a 60-year-old man in a $3,000 suit with a shark-like grin, stood up. Mr. Mercer, do you have a history of violence? I have. Didn't you spend 7 years in prison for beating a man nearly to death? I passed. And isn't it true that you trespassed on private property, assaulted my client, and then made up this story? To justify your actions? Jake looked at him. No. Mr. Mercer, do you expect this court to believe that a sheriff with 30 years of exemplary service... Exemplary? Jake interrupted. Your client sold a 6-year-old child for $15,000. If that's exemplary, then I'm Pope. Laughter in the gallery. The judge banged the gavel. Order, the lawyer continued. Mr. Mercer, you have no proof of that, only your word, and the word of 2 traumatized children who may have been influenced. Jake stood up. I saw the bruises, I saw the ropes, I heard the words. But you also admitted that you broke in. Because no one else was going to do anything, Jake shouted. The judge banged the gavel again. Mr. Mercer, take a seat. Jake took a deep breath. He sat down. His hands were trembling. The lawyer smiled. No more questions. Then, in the hallway, Jake leaned against the wall. He closed his eyes. Margaret appeared beside him. You did well. It does not seem. Juries aren't stupid, Jake. They saw the truth. They just need to connect the dots. What if they don't connect? Margaret remained silent. Ethan and Emma were sitting on a nearby bench, coloring drawings that the social worker had given them to distract them. They looked at Jake. They smiled. Jake smiled back. But inside he was falling apart. If Dobbs were to go free, if the system were to fail again, Jake didn't know what he would do. 3 days later, the verdict. Guilty. All three. Dobbs, 25 years without the possibility of parole. Kyle and Dean, 15 years old each. When the hammer fell, Jake closed his eyes. He felt tears welling up. For the first time in 28 years. Justice. I didn't bring Lily back, but he saved Emma. And perhaps, just perhaps, that would be enough. 6 months later, Jake was in the backyard of the house he had fixed up. It wasn't big. Paint was peeling in places. The roof leaked when it rained heavily. But it had 3 bedrooms. Kitchen, a backyard with an old tree. Emma was hanging from a swing Jake had built, laughing. A sound he didn't know he needed to hear. Ethan was helping Jake fix the fence. Quiet, but present. Do you think she'll be okay? Ethan asked, hammering a bent nail. Jake looked at his sister. I think she's doing well now. But what happened? It's not going away, is it? Jake stopped hammering. He looked at the boy. No, it won't. But it also won't define who she is, or who you are. Ethan nodded. And you? Are you okay? Jake thought. For the first time in a long time, he really thought about the answer. I'm trying. Ethan smiled, a small smile, but genuine. That night, after the children were asleep, Jake sat on the porch, beer in hand, gazing at the stars. Bear appeared. He parked his motorcycle. He went up the steps. I came to see how Dad is doing. Jake laughed. Shut up. Bear sat down beside him. Seriously, how are you? Jake remained silent. Then he replied, I spent 28 years thinking I had failed, that I didn't deserve a second chance, that the world would be better off without me. And now I wake up in the morning and 2 children need me. They need me to be strong. They need me not to give up. And it's strange, but it makes me want to be better. Bear nodded. Family does this to us. Jake looked around the house, at the lights that were off, at the 2 bedrooms where 2 children slept, safe and protected. I still have nightmares. Jake admitted. I still see Lily. I still wonder what I could have done differently. And what do you answer? Jake took a deep breath. I can't change the past, but I can protect their future. Bear remained silent. Then he raised his beer. That's it. Jake made a toast. They stood there, 2 broken men. 2 men who had seen too much, done too much, but still trying, still fighting, still protecting. 3 weeks later, Jake received the call. Margaret. Jake, the guardianship has been converted. You have permanent custody. Jake couldn't speak. He could only listen. Congratulations. You are officially a father. When he hung up, Jake stood there, staring at his phone. Okay, he had been a father before, and he had failed. But this time, he wasn't going to fail. That night, Jake went into Emma's room. She was awake, looking out the window. Can't you sleep? He asked. She shook her head. Jake sat on the edge of the bed. Do you want to talk? Emma remained silent. Then she asked, Do you think my mother would be proud of me? Jake felt his throat tighten. I think your mother fought every day to keep you safe, and I think she would be very happy knowing that you're okay now. Emma looked at him. And you? Are you proud of me? Jake didn't hesitate. All day. Emma smiled. She closed her eyes. She fell asleep. Jake stood there. watching, protecting, just like he had done with Lily, as he couldn't do with Lily, like I was going to do with Emma. Always. 6 months turned into a year. 1 year turned into 2. And Jake Mercer, the man who had lost everything, who had sworn never to care again, found something he thought impossible. Redemption. Not complete, never complete. But it's real. And perhaps in the end, that's what the road always wanted to teach. The journey back doesn't erase the scars, but it gives you a reason to keep going. If this story touched you, leave a like now and subscribe to the channel because you can't miss the series of unpublished stories that I'll be bringing you in the next videos, and comment below which part of this story caught your attention the most. There's a video on the screen that will bring you emotions as strong as a storm. Click on it now and come with me for another story with a devastating twist.